He texted you out of nowhere, "I miss you." Your heart races, your mind spirals, but wait, before you respond, ask yourself this: is it love, or is it just a pattern pulling you back in? This one moment could either set you free or trap you all over again. If you've ever doubted your worth, ignored your gut, or settled for less, this is your wake-up call. Don't make the same mistake twice. Watch this now before you answer him. She hadn't heard from him in weeks. The silence had turned from confusion to clarity. For days she wondered if she had done something wrong, replaying every conversation like a movie she was trying to rewrite. Then, one ordinary evening, her phone buzzed. It was his name. Familiar, electric, dangerous. Just 2 words. "Hey, you." Her heart leapt before she could stop it. The message was casual, almost lazy, but it hit like a wave. She stared at it, unsure what she felt. Hope or fear? The silence had made her stronger, but now this message threatened to unravel her. A million thoughts raced through her mind. Should she respond? Was this the apology she was waiting for, or another test of her boundaries? Her instincts whispered something her heart wasn't ready to hear. There's a strange thing that happens when someone you once cared for reappears. It's not always about love or longing. It's about memory. Her body remembered the way he made her feel in the beginning, wanted, special, lit up, but it also remembered the tears, the waiting, the wondering why she wasn't enough. Still, she hesitated. She told herself maybe he had changed. Maybe the time apart gave him clarity. Maybe he missed her. Those maybes were soft and seductive. They gave her a reason to ignore the pit in her stomach. But that pit, that tightening in her chest, was the truth trying to break through. She had grown since he left. She had learned to be okay without his attention. But now she stood at a crossroads between progress and a pattern. She looked back at the way things ended. No conversation, no closure, just distance disguised as disinterest. She remembered how often she had to initiate, how often she felt like she was chasing a ghost. Every time she tried to bring things to a deeper place, he'd pull away. But this message, it felt like a breadcrumb, a way to keep her emotionally hooked without offering anything real. She thought about the nights she stayed up trying to decode his mixed signals, how exhausted she felt trying to earn consistency. And here it was again, an opening. But not the kind that builds a future, the kind that reopens wounds. Still, part of her felt drawn to the idea of reconnecting. That little voice inside told her to hope, but her gut, it was screaming for her to pause. She started typing, then deleting, then typing again. Every word felt like a negotiation with herself. If she responded, what would it mean? Was she saying she was available to someone who hadn't made the effort to be there before? Would she be setting a precedent that this minimal energy was enough to earn her attention again? She knew deep down, if he really valued her, it wouldn't just be a 2-word text. It would be a call, a plan, a genuine effort to explain, to apologize, to rebuild trust. But that wasn't what this was. This was a test, not of him, but of her. Would she betray herself for a chance at something that had already hurt her once? Or would she trust that uncomfortable feeling, the one that told her to stay grounded in her growth? The danger wasn't in replying, the danger was in what replying represented. It meant she was still waiting for him to choose her, even after everything. It meant the part of her that had healed was willing to reopen the door just because someone knocked. She remembered something a friend once told her. The person who disappears without explanation doesn't deserve to reappear without one. That truth hit hard. She wanted so badly for this to mean something, but if it meant compromising her boundaries, then it wasn't worth it. She had worked too hard to rebuild her confidence, to fill her days with people who showed up, who didn't make her question her worth. This moment wasn't about him, it was about her. About whether she would listen to that inner voice that had never led her astray. The hard part wasn't knowing what to do, it was doing it. She had a habit of seeing the best in people, even when they didn't show it. She would rather believe in someone's potential than face their pattern. That belief had cost her a lot in the past. Time, tears, self-respect. But now, this moment gave her a chance to do something different, to not just recognize the pattern, but step out of it. Her instinct had been right before. It told her when things didn't feel right, when conversations felt hollow, when attention felt inconsistent. But back then she ignored it because she wanted love to win. Now she realized love does win, but only when it includes self-love too. She left the message unread, not out of anger, not to play games, but because it didn't deserve a reply, not yet, and maybe not ever. She didn't owe him her peace just because he decided to reach out. She owed herself protection. Every time she had ignored her instincts, it ended in pain. This time she chose differently. She remembered who she became without him, stronger, clearer, more confident, and she knew that going back would be a betrayal to that woman. So she put down the phone and picked up her journal, wrote about what she felt. Not to suppress the emotions, but to move through them with intention. Her heart still cared, but her wisdom was louder, and that mattered more. In the days that followed, she noticed something powerful. The urge to reply faded. The longer she stayed grounded, the clearer she saw the dynamic for what it was. It wasn't love calling, it was nostalgia. And nostalgia's tricky. It paints the past in soft light, makes you forget the darkness. But instincts remember it all. They're rooted in the part of you that has witnessed your highest and lowest moments. They exist to guide, to protect, to remind you who you are when your emotions try to convince you otherwise. She had always had that inner compass, but now, for the first time, she followed it fully, without apology. And what came from that decision wasn't just peace, it was power. Power in knowing she didn't need to chase. Power in realizing that silence can speak louder than any response. That withholding your energy is sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself. She had broken the cycle, not because he changed, but because she did. The mistake would have been thinking that a message meant something had shifted, but it hadn't. What had shifted was her standard. Her ability to sit with the discomfort of not knowing and still choose herself. And from that place, anything was possible. Real connection, real love, real alignment, but only when led by truth, not fantasy. He asked her out for dinner on a random Thursday evening, casually, as if nothing had happened, as if weeks of silence didn't leave her questioning everything. His message said, "Been thinking about you, want to catch up?" Something in her stirred. Curiosity, maybe, or the aching need to feel seen again. She hesitated. Every part of her wanted to believe this could be different, that maybe he'd had time to think, to realize what he lost. She reasoned that it couldn't hurt to talk, just to see. But even as she agreed, something inside her tensed. Not fear exactly, more like a quiet resistance, a knowing. She ignored it. Dressing up with cautious hope, wrapped in lipstick and perfume, when he arrived, he smiled like nothing had ever gone wrong. That easy charm, the one that had hooked her before, was in full effect. He complimented her dress, pulled out her chair, ordered her favorite drink. For a moment, she relaxed into the familiarity. This was the version of him she had missed, the one who was present, engaged, magnetic. But as the night went on, something felt off. He talked a lot about work, about his recent trip, even about people she didn't know. He asked almost nothing about her. She kept waiting for the moment where the conversation would shift, where he'd say, "I'm sorry," or "I've been thinking about us." But it never came. Her heart began sinking quietly beneath her smile. Halfway through dinner, it hit her. He wasn't there to fix anything. He was there because he missed the comfort, not the connection. She realized he hadn't reached out because he valued her. He reached out because he missed the attention she gave. He missed being admired, being listened to, being desired. But he hadn't taken the time to wonder what she needed or how she felt. As she looked across the table, her instinct got louder. This wasn't love. This was convenience. And she had made herself available out of hope, not because anything had changed. The hardest part was that she wanted to believe it so badly. But belief without evidence is just a setup for disappointment. She thought back to all the times she had accepted crumbs, when she justified inconsistency because the highs were so high, when she explained away the distance because he was just busy. But now face to face, she could see it clearly. He hadn't grown. He hadn't reflected. He was here, in the same energy he left with. Like, charming and unavailable, she realized this wasn't a reunion, it was a rerun. And the last time she watched this show, it ended with tears and self-doubt. Still, she sat through dinner, nodding, smiling, trying not to let her disappointment show. But her body spoke the truth. Her chest felt heavy. Her mind raced. Her gut was begging her not to go back. And when the check came, he offered to pay. She thanked him politely. He leaned in and said, "Let's not wait so long next time." Something inside her almost agreed out of habit, but then she paused. Why should there even be a next time if this one still held no real intention? She walked to her car in silence, feeling a storm brewing behind her calm expression. The dinner didn't break her heart, it clarified it. What hurt wasn't what he said, but what he didn't. He didn't ask why she hadn't reached out, didn't acknowledge the silence between them, didn't show any sign that he understood how much it had affected her. And that silence spoke louder than anything. Sitting in the driver's seat, she finally exhaled. For weeks, she had wondered what she would say if he ever reached out. She imagined conversations filled with vulnerability, with healing, with truth. But none of that happened. Instead, it was surface level banter, dressed up as interest. And in that moment, she realized something painful and powerful. The closure she wanted was never going to come from him. It had to come from her. She didn't need another empty dinner or vague promise. She needed to trust what she saw and, more importantly, what she felt. And what she felt was that her instinct had been right all along. He wasn't here for her. He was here for himself. The hardest part of healing is not the loneliness, it's facing the truth you tried to avoid. She had hoped time apart would spark his clarity, but all it did was deepen hers. This wasn't about revenge or playing hard to get. This was about honoring the version of herself that had cried over him, doubted herself for him, questioned her worth because of his absence. That woman deserved better. And this dinner was proof. Proof that her growth wasn't just internal, it was practical. She could now spot emotional unavailability in real time. She could feel when someone was performing interest instead of showing it. That was a skill born from pain, but it was powerful. As she drove home, she thought about how easy it would have been to slip back into old patterns, to let nostalgia cloud her judgment. But she didn't. She observed, she listened, and she chose truth over fantasy. That was the real win. It wasn't that he reached out. It was that she reached a point where she could respond with discernment, not desperation. Her instinct had been subtle, but persistent. It spoke in tension, in silence, in gut feelings that didn't need words. And for the first time, she didn't push that voice away. She leaned into it. Let it guide her. And because of that, she walked away not with heartbreak, but with clarity. Clarity doesn't always feel good at first. Sometimes it comes wrapped in disappointment, but it's a gift because it ends the guessing. It frees you from waiting, from hoping someone will change. She remembered sitting across from him, realizing he was the same man who left her confused and unfulfilled. And instead of trying to convince him to change, she simply accepted it. That was her power. That was her peace. She didn't need drama or closure speeches. She just needed to trust what her body already knew, that she was worth more than someone who only reached out when it was easy, not when it mattered. And that realization was everything. The truth is, your instinct knows before your mind can rationalize it. It whispers when something is off, when someone's presence feels temporary, when a smile doesn't reach the soul. For too long, she had prioritized chemistry over consistency, but now she understood. Real connection doesn't need performance. It shows up with effort, with vulnerability, with presence. She would no longer mistake charm for character. She would no longer accept attention in place of intention. That night changed her. Not because he did something extraordinary, but because she finally saw through the illusion. She didn't leave bitter. She left better. because she finally believed her instincts were worth listening to.
She stood in front of the mirror, her reflection staring back with a calm she hadn't felt in weeks. Her phone was on the counter beside her, screen still glowing from his message, "I miss you, can we talk?" The words hit her like a sudden breeze, stirring up emotions she thought had settled. Her fingers had hovered over the keyboard, tempted to respond instantly, but something made her pause. It wasn't hesitation. It was wisdom, the kind that doesn't shout, but gently pulls you back from the edge. She looked into her own eyes, trying to find the truth beneath the longing. Did she miss him? Yes. But did she miss the way she used to feel in the space between his messages? Even more. Her heart remembered the warmth of his voice, the feeling of his hand wrapped around hers, the way he looked at her when they were alone, but her body remembered the anxiety, the knots in her stomach when texts went unanswered, the tightness in her chest when he canceled plans last minute. That duality was difficult to hold, the beauty of the good moments and the ache of the empty ones. She wanted to believe that this message meant change, that maybe he'd grown, that maybe this time he would choose her fully, but her instinct knew better. It wasn't a dramatic warning, it was a quiet knowing, the same knowing she had ignored the first time around. She thought back to the nights she cried quietly into her pillow, trying not to text him, trying to give him space, to appear cool, to avoid seeming needy. But deep down, she wasn't asking for too much. She was just asking for what she gave. And what she gave was presence, attention, effort. Her instinct had nudged her back then too, whispering, "This doesn't feel right." But she buried it under excuse. Told herself he was busy, stressed, just not good at expressing himself. Now, with his message blinking on her phone, she felt that same fork in the road. She could answer out of hope, or she could pause and ask what had really changed. The mirror became her witness as she asked the hard questions. Why now? Why reach out after disappearing into silence? Was this about her or about his guilt, boredom, or ego? Her gut told her it wasn't love that brought him back. It was the absence of her energy. He was used to being able to come and go without consequence, used to her grace, her forgiveness, her understanding. But this time felt different. She wasn't angry. She was clear. And clarity is more powerful than resentment. It gives you the strength to choose peace over closure, self-respect over validation. Her instinct wasn't bitter, it was awake. She picked up her phone, reread the message, and then gently placed it back down. Not today, she thought. Not until I'm sure. She wasn't playing games. She was protecting her progress. Because healing isn't about pretending you don't feel anything. It's about making decisions that align with your growth, not your weakness. She had worked hard to find her center again, to stop measuring her worth by his attention. And now she was being tested, not by him, but by herself. Would she go back to the version of her that accepted less just to feel something? Or would she honor the woman she had become, wiser, stronger, grounded? She remembered a time when she would have dropped everything to respond, a time when his attention felt like air, when a message from him could change the whole course of her day. But now she realized she was her own air, her own anchor. She didn't need his message to feel whole. She could hold the feeling of missing him and still not act on it. That was real strength, sitting with the discomfort without reaching for temporary comfort. Her instinct wasn't cruel, it was compassionate. It was saying, "You deserve more than this pattern." And for once, she believed it. As the hours passed, she thought about what she really wanted. Not just from him, but from love. She wanted someone who made her feel safe, seen, prioritized. Someone who didn't show up only when it was convenient. Someone whose presence wasn't a guessing game. She realized that responding now would send a message not just to him, but to herself. That the bare minimum was still enough, that she was willing to re-enter the same cycle just because someone knocked on the door again. And that didn't sit right anymore. Her instinct didn't want revenge, it wanted truth. And the truth was, if he truly valued her, he wouldn't need to text her back into his life. He'd show up in person, with clarity and commitment. She lit a candle, made herself tea, and sat in silence. No music, no distractions, just her and her thoughts. She asked herself, what do I know for sure? And the answer was clear. She knew how it felt to be uncertain, waiting for someone else to decide if she was enough. She knew how it felt to smile through confusion, to pretend she was okay when she wasn't, and she knew that she never wanted to feel that way again. Her instinct wasn't just trying to protect her heart, it was protecting her future. It was saying, this is not love, this is a lesson she was finally ready to learn without reliving it. She thought about writing back just to see where his head was at, but then she remembered. The last time she asked that, he gave her vague answers, kept things casual, avoided depth. She didn't want to see where his head was. She wanted someone who already knew where theirs was and wanted to include her in it. Her instinct reminded her that she didn't have to chase clarity from someone else when she could create it within herself. And right now, clarity meant waiting, not out of pride, but out of protection. She deserved a love that didn't make her question her worth. And that kind of love doesn't start with, I miss you. It starts with, I'm sorry. Here's what I've learned. As night fell, her phone remained silent. No follow-up text, no call. And strangely, that brought relief. It confirmed what she feared and what she needed to know. If she had responded too quickly, she might have missed the truth. But now, in the quiet, it was clear. He had sent the message to reopen the door, not to rebuild the house. Her instinct had caught it before her heart could get too loud. And for that, she was grateful. Because every time she listened to that voice, she felt more like herself, more aligned, more free. And freedom, she realized, wasn't about being untouched by emotion. It was about being unshaken by old patterns. Instead of replying right away, she paused. She sat there, her phone in hand, not feeling the need to rush. There was a strange sense of power in the stillness. She could feel the temptation to immediately respond, to fall back into the familiar rhythm of quick replies, casual conversations, and unspoken expectations. But this time, something was different. She knew that the best decision wasn't the first one that popped into her mind. It wasn't the immediate response that seemed to come from a place of emotion, vulnerability, and fear of being left unanswered. It was the choice to take a step back, to give herself the time to truly think about what this moment meant for her. She had learned that reacting in the heat of the moment wasn't always the smartest choice. In that pause, she gave herself the gift of reflection. She asked herself, what do I really want from this interaction? It wasn't just about the immediate desire to feel validated or wanted. She had outgrown the habit of looking for external sources to fill her sense of worth. She realized that while it would feel good to receive his attention, the question she should be asking was whether it was the kind of attention that would align with who she was becoming. The question wasn't about whether she should respond. It was about whether responding would bring her closer to the woman she wanted to be, or simply keep her in an old pattern that no longer served her. She leaned back and took a deep breath. This pause wasn't just about space. It was a moment to reconnect with herself. In the past, she would have rushed through these moments, convincing herself that staying in the flow of conversation was more important than staying true to herself. But now she recognized the power in slowing down. The power wasn't in the response. It wasn't in the immediate validation. It was in the ability to control the timing of her decision. In taking this pause, she allowed her mind and heart to recalibrate. She asked herself, what do I truly need right now? She had spent so much of her life responding to others' needs, but this was her moment to prioritize hers. As the minutes passed, she felt the pull of the old habits, the desire to feel connected, to not miss out, to not seem distant. It was easy to fall back into those patterns, easy to believe that showing up quickly meant she was still invested. She knew better now. She had learned that showing up for herself was the most powerful thing she could do. And showing up meant asking the hard questions. Does this relationship still nurture me? Does it align with who I am becoming? Her instinct told her that if she responded too quickly, she would be going back into a space that wasn't healthy for her anymore. She had spent enough time in relationships where the emotional pace was dictated by others. She was tired of running to catch up. The beauty of that pause was that it allowed her to think through the situation clearly, without emotional rush. She wasn't ignoring her feelings, quite the opposite. She was acknowledging them, allowing them the space to breathe, but also giving her mind the opportunity to step in. She realized that her past habit had been to react emotionally without taking the time to process what those emotions were really telling her. Her feelings of longing were real, but so was her desire for peace, for respect, for something more substantial. She no longer needed the reassurance that someone else's attention could provide. She was learning to give herself that reassurance. The pause was giving her the space to embrace her own strength. It was in this moment of stillness that she realized how much power she had been giving away in the past by responding immediately, by opening the door to whatever was being offered without considering whether it truly served her. She remembered the times she had ignored the signs, the times when he didn't show up, when he only came around when it was convenient for him. She remembered the promises that were never kept, the words that never materialized into action. But this time, she had the clarity to see beyond the surface. The message was clear, but it wasn't about the words, it was about how she would choose to respond. She didn't need him to define her worth, to fill the void of what was missing. She was complete, whole, and capable of making decisions from a place of confidence, not desperation. Her mind wandered back to the times when she had been quick to reply out of fear of losing someone, fear of being alone, fear of rejection. He had done that so many times before, had rushed into conversations, believing that any contact was better than no contact. She had stayed in relationships that didn't serve her, conversations that left her drained, hoping that the more she gave, the more she would get in return. But now she understood something crucial. The most powerful thing she could do was nothing, not out of fear, but out of self-respect, to simply exist in the silence, knowing that the space she held was sacred. Not every door that opened deserved her attention. Not every message that arrived needed a response. The pause allowed her to recalibrate, to remember her worth. When she finally made the decision to not reply immediately, it wasn't out of coldness, it was out of empowerment. She had learned that waiting didn't mean weakness, it meant strength. Waiting gave her the time to reflect on her own needs and desires, without being swayed by the pull of someone else's energy. The world often pushes us into reacting quickly, into making decisions based on immediate gratification, but real strength is found in the moments of pause, when you sit with your emotions and give yourself the space to think. The pause wasn't about playing games. It was about taking back her power, taking back her voice, and choosing to make decisions based on her own values, not on someone else's timing. She didn't need to explain herself. She didn't need to rush back into old patterns. She didn't need to let someone else's timetable dictate her peace. The power was in the choice, her choice, and that choice was to honor herself, her journey, and her boundaries. She recognized that every moment she spent waiting, every moment she spent reflecting, was an investment in herself. By taking a step back, she wasn't losing anything. She was gaining everything. Gaining the confidence to trust her instincts, gaining the wisdom to know when to step forward and when to let things fall away, gaining the peace that comes with making decisions that were aligned with her highest good. In that stillness, she understood that her time and energy were precious. She could no longer afford to give them away in the name of fear or longing. She could no longer react simply because someone reached out.